16-year-old Trellis Sykes met a tragic end on May 13, 1994 in Houston, Texas. She took her usual shortcut to school that morning, but never returned home. Her family frantically searched for her, and just hours later, her lifeless body was discovered in an abandoned lot near the path she had taken. The brutal and unsolved murder of this innocent teenager is finally brought to light thanks to the relentless reporting of ABC 13 journalist Courtney Fisher. Despite decades passing, those close to Trellis keep her memory alive as we dive into her story. Welcome to No Tears for Black Girls. Born into a loving family in Sunnyside, a historically black neighborhood in Houston with a rich past, Trellis faced tragedy at a young age with the sudden deaths of both her parents. She and her siblings were separated, and she excelled both academically and athletically, despite the loss. But on a normal Friday morning, someone was waiting for her along her usual route to school, and Trellis never made it there again. Her Aunt Pam discovered she was missing when she returned home from work, leading to their worst nightmare becoming reality, the beloved Trellis being brutally taken away forever. Pam recounted the harrowing events. Her sister, Trellis, was always reliable and responsible until the day she didn't come home from school. Panic consumed them as they frantically searched for her, begging anyone who would listen for information. The streets of Sunnyside, once a place of comfort, now felt ominous and foreboding. With each passing minute and no updates, their fear and dread only intensified. And then came the phone call that shattered their world. Trellis's lifeless body had been discovered in an empty field just yards away from her usual shortcut to school. The innocence of Sunnyside was forever tainted with tragedy and sorrow. Pam could not hold back her tears as she relived the painful scene at the field, where they confirmed Trellis's identity by the lone sneaker still on her foot. Their worst fears had cruelly become a heart-wrenching reality. The hunt for Trellis had ceased, but the search for answers into her demise was only just beginning. At a mere 16 years old, Trellis was on her way to school when she met her untimely fate. It was unfathomable that anyone could commit such a heinous act and leave her body in that desolate field. Though found, justice would not come swiftly. On May 13, 1994, Trellis Sykes left her home to walk to school as she had done so many times before. But this time, someone waited for her along her regular route, attacking and ultimately ending her life before leaving her in the abandoned field. Detectives were faced with a difficult case from the start, with little evidence at the scene and limited forensic technology available at the time. One thing was certain: whoever did this was a monster. Signs of struggle and assault were evident on Trellis's broken nails and defensive wounds. She fought against her attacker until he overpowered her in the early morning hours when no one else was around to hear or see anything. Despite being a frequently traveled path for members of their community, Trellis was alone on that fateful day while her killer lay in wait. Though DNA was collected from her body during the autopsy, it was too little to produce a reliable profile back in 1994. Investigators turned to the community for leads, aware of the rising crime rates and dangers lurking within their neighborhood. However, even with interviews of sex workers and drug dealers known to frequent the area, nothing substantial came to light. 7 days after Trellis's brutal murder, her devastated family and friends gathered for a crowded funeral, grieving the loss of a vibrant and promising young girl. Despite repeated pleas from the community to clear the dangerous lot where Trellis was found, their concerns were ignored until tragedy struck. The Sykes family, already reeling from the loss of both parents 3 years prior, now had to face yet another devastating blow as they struggled to come to terms with the loss of Trellis. The siblings were left without guidance or support, a shattered family trying to cope with unimaginable pain. Pam, still unable to leave the safety of her home months after her sister's murder, spoke out about her fear and the inexplicable senselessness of it all. Meanwhile, Students at Worthing High School were forced to confront their own mortality in the wake of Trellis's death, a harsh reality for teenagers. Classes ground to a halt as everyone tried to process what had happened. In an interview with ABC 13, former Vice Principal Ronnie Evans described the shock and fear that gripped the school community. As detectives delved deeper into their investigation, they uncovered a disturbing pattern. At least 11 other women had been attacked or raped in Sunnyside within just 16 months, leading up to Trellis's murder, yet no action had been taken. All of them shared eerily similar stories and descriptions of the suspect. The rumors of a serial rapist on the loose had been circulating for some time, but Trellis's death solidified those fears and consumed the community with terror as they waited for justice. Despite tireless efforts from investigators, their search for answers continually hit dead ends. Eventually, the lot where Trellis was taken was demolished, but for her loved ones, there was little solace in this small victory. As time passed, and hope of finding the killer dwindled, the once determined pursuit of justice turned into an agonizing waiting game with no end in sight. Despite the efforts of detectives, Trellis's family remained convinced that there were two individuals involved in her murder. They refused to believe that one person alone could have committed such a heinous act against their beloved daughter, a tall and athletic young woman who exuded strength. But as the years passed by with no suspects emerging, the case slowly grew colder and colder until it was completely forgotten. However, the community of Sunnyside never forgot about Trellis and the tragedy that had befallen her. In 2002, 8 years after her death, a basketball court at Bricker Park was renamed in her honor. The mayor and chief of police attended the dedication ceremony along with over 100 of Trellis's friends and family, but it was a bittersweet moment as justice had still not been served for her. It wasn't until 2013, almost 20 years after her murder, that there was a glimmer of hope for closure. The Houston Police Department discovered that DNA evidence from 11 unsolved rape cases had finally been tested after being backlogged for years. One man, Herman Woodfield, was arrested and convicted for 4 of the assaults, but when his DNA was compared to Trellis's case, it did not match. However, detectives still consider him a person of interest and believe he may be responsible for numerous other crimes, including Trellis's murder, due to suspicious geographical patterns in the timeline of these attacks. As one detective stated, there are too many coincidences to deny his involvement in this senseless act of violence against an innocent victim. In the year 2022, ABC 13 reporter Courtney Fisher made her way through the cold, sterile halls of the prison to meet with Whitfield. Despite his guilty plea, he refused to divulge any details about his crimes or the infamous Trellis murder that still haunted the Sunnyside community. With every passing year, hope dwindled for justice, as evidence remained inconclusive and leads ran dry. For Trellis's family and friends, her death was a wound that never fully healed. They held tight to her memory, but time had taken its toll on them. Only 16 years old, Trellis had so much potential, intelligent, kind, and a gifted athlete. The heinousness of her murder shook the city to its core. The thought that someone could get away with such a vile act for 3 decades was unfathomable. But perhaps now, with advancements in technology and renewed dedication from investigators, they could finally find closure. Yet, there is also the possibility that someone out there knows something, and it's time for them to come forward and speak up. Trellis's story must be told, a reminder that unsolved murders should never be forgotten or ignored. She deserved better than being just another statistic in a police file. On May 13, 1994, Trellis Sykes lost her life in the Sunnyside area of Houston, Texas. Just 16 years young, she was found in an abandoned lot, a victim of senseless violence on her way to school. If you have any information about this case, please reach out to the Houston Police Department. Let us not forget Trellis Sykes, and may she rest in peace. Thank you for tuning in to No Tears for Black Girls. This series is skillfully crafted by acclaimed writer and producer John Reedberg with the guidance of unapologetic host Samantha Paul. Catch new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday on all major podcast platforms. You can listen anywhere, anytime. And if you truly enjoy our content, please leave a 5-star rating and positive review. Remember to stay loved, stay blessed, and stay safe.